Great talent wins games. Great stories win hearts. World Cup '98. A flick of the boot, a flash of red, and a 23-year-old David Beckham becomes the most hated man in England. Threats, headlines, boos in every stadium. How does a national villain become a global icon? He was the poster boy of a new Premier League, precision crosses, vicious free kicks, haircuts that launched trends, and a fame machine that never slept. But behind the gloss was a career that started with humiliation and climbed toward redemption, brick by brick. From the boy in Leytonstone who worshipped Old Trafford to the right flank of Manchester United's class of '92, from a red card that broke a nation's heart to a last-minute free kick that sent that same nation to a World Cup. From dressing rooms ruled by Sir Alex to the white heat of the Galacticos and the American frontier that changed soccer culture, Beckham's arc is about control, of a ball, of a narrative, of a life lived under floodlights. This isn't just a football story. It's a story about reputation, how it's built, broken, and rebuilt, about the cost of celebrity when your lungs are burning and its stadium is judging, and about legacy, not only what you win, but what you leave behind for an entire league and generation. Our thesis is simple. Beckham didn't just bend the ball, he bent the arc of his career, from disgrace to leadership, from winger to world ambassador. The stakes were brutal. The tabloid gallows, the weight of a nation, the doubt of managers and teammates, and the risk of being remembered as a brand instead of a player. What he wins or loses depends on every decision after '98.
David Robert Joseph Beckham was born on May 2nd, 1975 in Leytonstone, East London, to a working-class family. His father, Ted, was a kitchen fitter, his mother, Sandra, a hairdresser. They were not wealthy, but they carried an inheritance far more valuable for young David, a deep, unshakable love for football. Ted was a fanatical Manchester United supporter, and from the time David could walk, he was dressed in red shirts and immersed in stories of George Best and Bobby Charlton. Unlike many children in East London who split their allegiance between West Ham or Spurs, Beckham's obsession was singular: Old Trafford. He would later admit that when teachers asked what he wanted to be when he grew up, his answer was not a footballer, but specifically a Manchester United player. That sense of clarity at such a young age set him apart. His childhood was disciplined. Ted would take him to the local park, spending endless hours striking balls, correcting his posture, urging him to repeat one motion hundreds of times. This was not glamorous training. It was lonely, repetitive, and exhausting. Yet, Beckham loved it. By his early teens, he was already known in local circles for a rare precision in his right foot. He could bend the ball at angles that defied expectation. A skill born not from natural flair alone, but from relentless practice after school until darkness made the pitch unplayable. At just 11 years old, Beckham won a national skills competition organized by Bobby Charlton soccer schools, drawing attention from scouts across England. Tottenham Hotspur showed interest, so did Leyton Orient. But when Manchester United offered a place in their prestigious youth program, there was never a doubt. For Beckham, it wasn't just joining a club, it was stepping into the dream he had spoken aloud since childhood. This moment was more than a beginning. It was the crystallization of a boyhood fantasy into a path of destiny. But, as every dreamer soon learns, the climb from the academy to the first team is brutal, and not everyone survives it.
At Manchester United's academy, Beckham entered a crucible of competition. The early 1990s were a turbulent time for English football, still rebuilding its reputation after the tragedies and bans of the 1980s. Sir Alex Ferguson, then assembling what would become a dynasty, demanded not only talent but resilience. For Beckham, this was the proving ground. He was part of the now legendary class of '92, alongside Ryan Giggs, Paul Scholes, Nicky Butt, and the Noble brothers. Together, they would define a generation. But in those early days, Beckham was not yet the icon. He was shy, polite, almost too clean-cut compared to the rougher personalities around him. What marked him out was his precision. Teammates recall him staying behind long after training ended, sending ball after ball into an empty net, or drilling crosses until his legs trembled. Ferguson saw not just talent, but obsession. Beckham's professional debut came in 1992, in a League Cup match against Brighton and Hove Albion. It was a modest stage, but a step into the arena. His league debut followed in 1995 against Leeds United, and though the performance was tentative, Ferguson's trust in his young core was clear. Critics, however, were ruthless. When Ferguson sold senior players and leaned on his youth academy, pundits mocked him. The famous headline read, "You'll never win anything with kids." Beckham, barely 20, was one of those kids. The turning point arrived on August 17, 1996, against Wimbledon. United were already 2 goals ahead when Beckham, spotting the goalkeeper off his line, unleashed a shot from the halfway line. The ball soared through the air, impossibly accurate, and dipped under the crossbar. It was a moment of audacity that announced him not just as a promising youngster, but as a player with flair and courage. Overnight, Beckham was no longer simply a member of the class of '92. He was a headline act. That goal altered perceptions. Fans embraced him, sponsors noticed him, and suddenly, Beckham was not just a footballer, but a budding celebrity. Yet within Old Trafford, Ferguson kept him grounded, reminding him that one strike did not make a career. Discipline, humility, and consistency were demanded. And Beckham, despite his growing fame, responded by working even harder. Still, fame had already found him. Magazine covers, photo shoots, and the first whispers of his life beyond football began to emerge. The shy boy from Leytonstone was becoming something bigger, a symbol of the new Premier League era, young, stylish, and global. But with visibility came scrutiny, and as the spotlight intensified, it would soon test Beckham in ways football alone never could.
By 1997, Beckham was no longer just a promising academy graduate. He was central to Manchester United's ambitions. His right foot had become a weapon that terrified goalkeepers and delighted strikers. Every set piece felt like a moment suspended in time, a chance for Beckham to bend the match to his will. Yet the true breakthrough in his career was not defined by triumph alone, but by the sharp contrast between disgrace and redemption. The 1997-98 season had established him as one of England's finest. He won the PFA Young Player of the Year, led United's midfield with precision, and became a fixture in Glenn Hoddle's England squad. But the defining moment came in the heat of the 1998 World Cup in France. England met Argentina in the round of 16, a fierce, emotional clash. In the 47th minute, Diego Simeone fouled Beckham from behind. Frustrated, lying on the turf, Beckham flicked his leg out in retaliation. It was petulant, slight, but enough. The referee produced a red card. England went on to lose on penalties, and Beckham became the scapegoat. Tabloids branded him national disgrace. Effigies were burned outside pubs. For months, every stadium he entered in England rained boos and insults upon him. At just 23 years old, he faced a crucible few athletes ever endure, the hatred of an entire nation. This was the lowest point in his career. Many young players would have crumbled, but Beckham did the opposite. He returned to United, determined to let his football do the speaking. The 1998-99 season became one of the most remarkable comebacks in English football history. Anchoring the right flank, Beckham delivered assists with machine-like consistency, orchestrated tempo, and delivered set pieces that turned tight matches. His influence was most vivid in United's treble-winning run. In the FA Cup semi-final replay against Arsenal, his long-range strike gave United the lead in a legendary clash, later remembered for Ryan Giggs' solo goal. In the Champions League final against Bayern Munich, it was Beckham's corner kicks in stoppage time that created both Teddy Sheringham's equalizer and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's winner. Twice, in 3 minutes, his precision changed history. The boy vilified in France had become indispensable in Manchester. His redemption was not just personal, but it was symbolic. He showed resilience, the ability to withstand national hostility and transform pain into performance. By the summer of 1999, David Beckham was no longer just a talented winger. He was the face of a generation, a player who embodied both the vulnerability and the defiance of English football. But if the treble cemented his footballing greatness, it also amplified his fame beyond the pitch. Every appearance, every haircut, every relationship, especially with Spice Girl Victoria Adams, was scrutinized and magnified. Beckham was no longer simply an athlete. He was becoming a cultural phenomenon. The question was no longer whether he could play at the top level. It was whether he could balance being both footballer and celebrity in a world eager to pull him apart.
The treble of 1999 was more than a trophy haul. It was the coronation of David Beckham as both a footballer of the highest caliber and a figure who transcended the sport itself. For Manchester United, the late 1990s marked an era of dominance. For Beckham, it marked the beginning of his transformation from footballer into global icon. From 1999 to 2003, Beckham reached his footballing zenith. He became a mainstay in United's midfield, orchestrating games with pinpoint delivery from the right flank. His statistics told a story of consistency, double-digit assists in consecutive Premier League campaigns, goals from free kicks that bent around walls with surgical precision, and an unmatched work ethic. Sir Alex Ferguson often praised his stamina. Beckham wasn't just a set-piece specialist, he was a tireless runner who covered every blade of grass, tracking back to defend and surging forward to create. The free kick against Greece. No moment captures Beckham's peak more vividly than October 6, 2001. England, teetering on the brink of missing the World Cup, needed a result against Greece at Old Trafford. With seconds remaining, England trailed 2-1. Then came the foul, 30 yards out. Everyone in the stadium knew who would take it. Beckham, who had already missed several attempts that day, stepped up one final time. The strike was pure perfection, curling over the wall, dipping beneath the bar, exploding the net. Old Trafford erupted, and England punched their ticket to the 2002 World Cup. That free kick was more than a goal, it was absolution. The same man who had been branded a traitor in 1998 was now hailed as England's savior. It crystallized his narrative of redemption and resilience, and it secured his status as England's captain, both literally and symbolically. The captain of England. As captain, Beckham led with courage, though not without flaws. He carried England through qualifiers, bore the weight of national expectation, and in the 2002 World Cup, scored the penalty against Argentina that exorcised demons from 4 years earlier. His leadership style was not one of booming speeches, but of relentless effort and example. He worked, he ran, he fought, always with the pride of the three lions stitched on his chest. Manchester United glory and fracture. Back at Manchester United, Beckham continued to deliver. His telepathic partnership with strikers like Andy Cole, Dwight York, Ruud van Nistelrooy, and Ole Solskjaer ensured United remained the dominant force in England. But as his fame grew, so did the tension. Media frenzy over Posh and Becks irritated Sir Alex Ferguson, who believed Beckham's celebrity lifestyle distracted from football. The infamous boot incident in 2003, where Ferguson accidentally struck Beckham above the eye during a dressing room altercation, symbolized the growing rift. By the summer of 2003, it was clear the relationship was fractured beyond repair. Real Madrid came calling, and Beckham joined the Galacticos, a constellation of stars including Zinedine Zidane, Luis Figo, Ronaldo, and Roberto Carlos. For Madrid, Beckham was more than a signing. He was a brand, a magnet for global attention. His shirt sales broke records. His image filled billboards from Tokyo to Los Angeles, and the Santiago Bernabeu became as much a catwalk as a stadium. Real Madrid and the Galacticos era. On the pitch, Beckham adapted. Though not as individually dominant as in Manchester, he contributed with his trademark delivery and work ethic. His passing range fit Madrid's attacking ethos, and though trophies were scarce during his tenure, one La Liga title in 2006-07, his global profile soared. Beckham the player and Beckham the phenomenon had become inseparable. Critics argued that his stardom overshadowed his football. They saw him as a marketing tool, a model, a celebrity spouse, but teammates spoke differently. Zidane admired his professionalism, Roberto Carlos praised his fitness, and Raúl highlighted his dedication. Beckham may have been the face on magazine covers, but he was also the man sweating hardest in training. The paradox of peak Beckham. This period defined the paradox of Beckham's career. At his peak, he was both revered and ridiculed. Revered for his skill, his engine, his ability to decide matches with a single swing of his right boot. Ridiculed for his fame, his fashion, his haircuts, as though being global icon somehow disqualified him as a footballer. Yet Beckham embraced both sides. He never shied away from the cameras, but he never let the criticism stop him from grinding on the training pitch. By the early 2000s, David Beckham was at once the most celebrated and the most scrutinized footballer in the world. He had conquered England, carried his nation, and become the face of Manchester United and Real Madrid. But when the spotlight shines that brightly, it can burn. And for Beckham, the years ahead would bring conflict, exile, and a surprising reinvention far from the stadiums of Europe.
For every summit in Beckham's story, there was always a shadow waiting. His peak years made him the most famous footballer on earth, but they also created friction that would push him away from Manchester United, the club of his boyhood dreams. The rift with Ferguson. Sir Alex Ferguson's genius was not only in tactics, but in control. He ruled United with an iron hand, and anyone who threatened the balance was quickly cut down. Beckham, with his growing celebrity marriage to Victoria Adams and endless tabloid exposure, became in Ferguson's eyes a distraction. The infamous moment came in 2003 after United's FA Cup defeat to Arsenal. Ferguson, furious in the dressing room, kicked a stray boot that struck Beckham above the eye. The wound was literal and symbolic. Their relationship was beyond repair. That summer, Beckham was sold to Real Madrid. It was a seismic moment. The boy who once wrote letters begging United for a trial was leaving under a cloud of conflict. Madrid's Galactico pressure. At Real Madrid, Beckham stepped into a galaxy of stars: Zidane, Ronaldo, Figo, and Roberto Carlos. While commercially he was a sensation, on the pitch he faced skepticism. Could he truly belong among these legends? For 4 years, he worked tirelessly, often overshadowed but never outshone in effort. Titles were elusive. Madrid's policy of piling stars together often created chaos rather than cohesion. By 2007, Beckham was aging and his role diminished. But then came another twist. Fabio Capello, initially dismissive of Beckham, dropped him and publicly declared his Madrid career over. Beckham responded not with anger, but with relentless training. He forced his way back into the team, becoming instrumental in Madrid's late charge to the La Liga title of 2006-07. It was a final reminder that beneath the stardom lay a footballer who never stopped fighting. The shock move to LA Galaxy. In January 2007, Beckham announced a move that stunned football. He would leave Europe for the Los Angeles Galaxy in Major League Soccer. Critics sneered. It was called a retirement tour, a cash grab, the end of his competitive career. But Beckham saw something different, a chance to grow the game. In America, he became the face of soccer. Crowds swelled, TV ratings rose, and Galaxy shirts with 23 flew off shelves. Though injuries initially hampered him, Beckham persevered, eventually winning 2 MLS Cups and reshaping the landscape of American football culture. He made it acceptable and lucrative for global stars to play in MLS, paving the way for Thierry Henry, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, and Lionel Messi years later. The comebacks, Milan and PSG. To silence doubts about his competitiveness, Beckham returned to Europe on loan with AC Milan in 2009 and 2010. Far from being out of place, he proved he could still dictate games in Serie A. His professionalism earned admiration from Milan's veterans, and his presence elevated the club commercially as well. In 2013, at the twilight of his career, he joined Paris Saint-Germain. Though his appearances were limited, his impact was profound. In his final professional match, teammates carried him off the pitch as the crowd roared. Tears streamed down his face. It was the end of a journey that had stretched from East London parks to the capitals of football. A new identity. Beckham's setbacks, being sold by Ferguson, doubted in Madrid, mocked for LA, were always countered by reinvention. He turned every dismissal into an opportunity. He had become more than just a player. He was an ambassador, a brand, and crucially, a man who proved that reinvention is itself a kind of greatness.
David Beckham retired in 2013, but by then his impact had long since outgrown the boundaries of the pitch. Few players in football history have left behind a legacy so layered, so paradoxical, and so enduring. On the field, Beckham will be remembered as one of the finest deliverers of a ball the game has ever seen. His right foot defined an era, free kicks that bent physics, crosses that found strikers as if guided by radar, and a work ethic that never allowed him to be a luxury player. He lifted 6 Premier League titles, 2 FA Cups, a Champions League, a La Liga crown, and MLS Cups in America. More importantly, he did it while carrying the burden of expectation for both Manchester United and England. But Beckham's true legacy is broader. He redefined what it meant to be a footballer in the modern age. Not just an athlete, but a global figure who shaped culture, fashion, and commerce. He became a bridge between football and popular culture, paving the way for today's generation of players to become global brands without apology. He also changed the trajectory of MLS and contributed to the globalization of the Premier League, making English football a household obsession in markets far beyond Europe. Above all, Beckham's story is one of resiliency. From Thoido in 1998 to captain and ambassador, he showed that a career is not defined by a single mistake, but by the courage to rise after the fall. Great talent wins games. Great stories win hearts. David Beckham's journey reminds us that glory is never linear. He stumbled, he was ridiculed, he was written off, but he rose, reinvented himself, and left football with a legacy that stretched far beyond 90 minutes on the pitch. If you've enjoyed uncovering the untold story of David Beckham from villain to global icon, make sure to subscribe, like, and share, because many more stories of football's greatest legends are still waiting to be told. And if you want to see another tale of redemption, betrayal, and triumph, stay tuned for our next deep dive, because the Premier League has never lacked drama.